Project 4.1. Project 4.1 was the designation for a medical study conducted by the United States of those residents of the Marshall Islands exposed to radioactive fallout from the March 1st, 1954 Castle Bravo nuclear test at Bikini Atoll, which had an unexpectedly large yield. For the first decade after the test, the effects were ambiguous and statistically difficult to correlate to radiation exposure. Miscarriages and stillbirths among exposed Rongelap women doubled in the first 5 years after the accident, but then returned to normal. Some developmental difficulties and impaired growth appeared in children. In the decades that followed, though, the effects were undeniable due to exposure to radioiodines, and almost a third of those exposed developed neoplasms by 1974. Project MK Ultra. Project MKUltra, or MK Ultra, was the code name for a CIA mind control research program run by the Office of Scientific Intelligence that began in the early 1950s and continued at least through the late 1960s. There is much published evidence that the project involved the surreptitious use of many types of drugs as well as other methodologies to manipulate individual mental states and to alter brain function. Experiments included administering LSD to CIA employees, military personnel, doctors, other government agents, prostitutes, mentally ill patients, and members of the general public in order to study their reactions. LSD and other drugs were usually administered without the subject's knowledge and informed consent, a violation of the Nuremberg Code that the U.S. agreed to follow after WW2. Efforts to recruit subjects were often illegal, even discounting the fact that drugs were being administered, though actual use of LSD, for example, was legal in the United States until October 6, 1966. In Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up several brothels to obtain a selection of men who would be too embarrassed to talk about the events. The men were dosed with LSD, and the brothels were equipped with one-way mirrors, and the sessions were filmed for later viewing and study. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra files destroyed. Pursuant to this order, most CIA documents regarding the project were destroyed, making a full investigation of MKUltra virtually impossible. The Aversion Project. South Africa's apartheid army forced white lesbian and gay soldiers to undergo sex change operations in the 1970s and the 1980s and submitted many to chemical castration, electric shock, and other unethical medical experiments. Although the exact number is not known, former apartheid army surgeons estimate that as many as 900 forced sexual reassignment operations may have been performed between 1971 and 1989 at military hospitals as part of a top-secret program to root out homosexuality from the service. Army psychiatrists, aided by chaplains, aggressively ferreted out suspected homosexuals from the armed forces, sending them discreetly to military psychiatric units, chiefly Ward 22 of one military hospital at Voortrekkerhoogte, near Pretoria. Those who could not be cured with drugs, aversion shock therapy, hormone treatment, and other radical psychiatric means were chemically castrated or given sex change operations. Although several cases of lesbian soldiers abused have been documented so far, including one botched sex change operation, most of the victims appear to have been young, 16 to 24-year-old white males drafted into the apartheid army. Dr. Aubrey Levin, the head of the study, is now clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry, Forensic Division, at the University of Calgary's Medical School. He is also in private practice, as a member in good standing of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta. North Korean experimentation. There have been many reports of North Korean human experimentation. These reports show human rights abuses similar to those of Nazi and Japanese human experimentation in World War II. These allegations of human rights abuses are denied by the North Korean government, who claim that all prisoners in North Korea are humanely treated. Kwon Hyok, a former prison head of security at Camp 22, described laboratories equipped respectively for poison gas, suffocation gas, poison laboratory of the Soviets, the poison laboratory of the Soviet Secret Services, also known as Laboratory 1, Laboratory 12, and the Chamber, was a covert poison research and development facility of the Soviet secret police agencies. The Soviets tested a number of deadly poisons on prisoners from the Gulag, enemies of the people, including mustard gas, ricin, digitoxin, and many others. The goal of the experiments was to find a tasteless, odorless chemical that could not be detected post-mortem. Candidate poisons were given to the victims with a meal or drink as medication. Finally, a preparation with the desired properties called C2 was developed. According to witness testimonies, the victim changed physically, became shorter, weakened quickly, became calm and silent, and died within 15 minutes. Miranovsky brought to the laboratory people of varied physical condition and ages in order to have a more complete picture about the action of each poison. In addition to human experimentation, Miranovsky personally executed people with poisons under the supervision of Pavel Sudoplatov. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis, conducted between 1932 and 1972 in Tuskegee, Alabama, in which 399 plus 201 control group without syphilis, poor, and mostly illiterate, African American sharecroppers were denied treatment for syphilis. This study became notorious because it was conducted without due care to its subjects and led to major changes in how patients are protected in clinical studies. Individuals enrolled in the Tuskegee syphilis study did not give informed consent and were not informed of their diagnosis. Instead, they were told they had bad blood and could receive free medical treatment, rides to the clinic, meals and burial insurance in case of death in return for participating. In 1932, when the study started, standard treatments for syphilis were toxic, dangerous, and of questionable effectiveness. Part of the original goal of the study was to determine if patients were better off not being treated with these toxic remedies. For many participants, treatment was intentionally denied. Many patients were lied to and given placebo treatments in order to observe the fatal progression of the disease. By the end of the study, only 74 of the test subjects were still alive. 28 of the men had died directly of syphilis. 100 were dead of related complications. 40 of their wives had been infected, and 19 of their children had been born with congenital syphilis. Unit 731. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that undertook lethal human experimentation during the Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937-1945, and World War II. It was responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes carried out by Japanese personnel. Some of the numerous atrocities committed by the commander Shiro Ishii and others under his command in Unit 731 include vivisection of living people, including pregnant women who were impregnated by the doctors. Prisoners had limbs amputated and reattached to other parts of their body. Some prisoners had parts of their bodies frozen and thawed to study the resulting untreated gangrene. Humans were also used as living test cases for grenades and flamethrowers. Prisoners were injected with strains of diseases, disguised as vaccinations, to study their effects. To study the effects of untreated venereal diseases, male and female prisoners were deliberately infected with syphilis and gonorrhea via rape, then studied. Having been granted immunity by the American occupation authorities at the end of the war, Ishii never spent any time in jail for his crimes and died at the age of 67 of throat cancer. Nazi experiments. Dr. Mengele organized the testing of genetics in twins. The twins were arranged by age and sex and kept in barracks in between the tests, which ranged from the injection of different chemicals into the eyes of the twins to see if it would change their colors to literally sewing the twins together in hopes of creating conjoined twins. In 1942, the Luftwaffe conducted experiments to learn how to treat hypothermia. One study forced subjects to endure a tank of ice water for up to 3 hours. Another study placed prisoners naked in the open for several hours with temperatures below freezing. The experimenters assessed different ways of rewarming survivors. From about July 1942 to about September 1943, experiments to investigate the effectiveness of sulfonamide, a synthetic antimicrobial agent, were conducted at Ravensbrück. Wounds inflicted on the subjects were infected with bacteria such as streptococcus, gas gangrene, and tetanus. Circulation of blood was interrupted by tying off blood vessels at both ends of the wound to create a condition similar to that of a battlefield wound. Infection was aggravated by forcing wood shavings and ground glass into the wounds. The infection was treated with sulfonamide and other drugs to determine their effectiveness. Slapstick. This kind of humor involves creating embarrassing, painful, or humiliating situations for those involved. And because it's physical in nature, it can only be appreciated through the sense of sight. It's typically full of real or simulated physical violence with the intention of making the audience laugh. Aggressive humor. This type of humor often relies on belittling others or making fun of another person at their expense. This might not sound like the type of humor that would cause an audience to roar with laughter, but when you watch these types of jokes performed at a roast, they make perfect sense. Self-enhancing humor. This style of humor is a unique one. Most of the time, when bad things happen to people, they don't often rely on jokes to make them feel better. But that's exactly what self-enhancing humor does. It's a way of using humor to cope with less than desirable experiences, like a horrible road trip gone wrong, only to be the very story that gets the biggest laugh at a dinner party. Self-deprecating humor. We've all used self-deprecating humor at one point or another, whether we knew it or not. But out of the humor styles, this one is definitely considered a more poor me type of humor. Sure, it can be funny, but it can also be a turnoff to some. At the root of it, though, this type of humor is about making yourself the punchline before somebody else can. Puns. Wordplay or puns can also mean twisting words around to make for a humorous effect. Take these words and phonetic mix-ups, for example. My word turtle dove or my turd whirl dove. Dry humor. It's a kind of inexpressive humor when jokes are told simply and with a serious tone of voice, and funny things are said without utilizing body language. Its greatest qualities are the observation's sharpness, wit, and conciseness, which contrast with the comedian's lack of feeling. Surreal humor. Monty Python is perhaps the best example of surreal humor. It's absurd and just plain silly. Some might call it odd, weird, strange, or quirky, but that's exactly what this style of comedy is after. Dark humor. Dark comedy is, as you can probably tell, a little dark. Oftentimes, this humor revolves around death, which isn't necessarily funny. Think of The Addams Family, for example, and how Wednesday always churns out a macabre spin on humorous things. When asked if she'd be interested in buying Girl Scout cookies, she inquired, "Are they made from real Girl Scouts?" Juvenile humor. Do you find fart jokes, toilet humor, name-calling, and bodily functions hilarious? Then juvenile humor may just be your cup of tea. It's called juvenile for a reason, because we all know that if you said the words butt or pee-pee to a classroom full of 8-year-olds, you'd probably get some guaranteed laughter. Observational comedy. It's one of the most popular forms of humor in stand-up comedy and is based on typical elements of daily life. The comic uses expressions like, "Have you ever noticed that?" to make an observation on something that is not frequently acknowledged, yet is common enough for their audience to be aware of. Witty humor. Witty humor is similar to wordplay, but there's an important distinction between the two. Oscar Wilde has quite a few that can inspire a laugh or two, like "Some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go," or "Always forgive your enemies, nothing annoys them so much." Farcical humor. Out of all the types of humor that exist, farcical definitely exists in the realm of the silly and absurd. Think of the 1985 movie Clue. When they finally discovered who killed who in the place with the what, they all go running around the mansion trying to piece things together. It's absurd. Affiliative humor. We suppose you can think of it as the complete opposite of aggressive humor that's otherwise divisive and mean. Instead, this style of comedy aims to get a laugh out of the mundane things we all experience in life. Sarcasm. It revolves more around irony than anything else. Of course, sarcasm can be a difficult style for some people to read, and some may even feel like it's mean when they don't understand its sarcasm in the first place. But when delivered properly, it's one of those types of humor that gets a laugh out of everyone. Stolen generations. The stolen generations refers to children of Aboriginal Australians and Torres Strait Islander descent who were forcibly removed from their families by Australian federal and state government agencies and church missions under acts of their respective parliaments between approximately 1869 and 1969. Beat generation. The Beat generation refers to a popular American cultural movement widely cited by social scholars as having laid the foundation of the proactive American counterculture of the 1960s. It consisted of Americans born between the two world wars who came of age in the rise of the automobile era and the surrounding accessibility they brought to the culturally diverse yet geographically broad and separated nation. Generation Jones. Generation Jones is a term coined by Jonathan Pontel to describe the cohort of people born between 1954 and 1965. The term is used primarily in English-speaking countries. Pontel defined Generation Jones as referring to the second half of the post-World War II baby boom. The term also includes First-Wave Generation X, MTV Generation, a term referring to the adolescents and young adults of the 1980s and early mid-1990s who were heavily influenced by the MTV television channel. It is often used synonymously with Generation X, Generation of 500. Generation of 500 is a term popularized by the Greek mass media and refers to educated Greek twixters of urban centers who generally fail to establish a career. Young adults are usually forced into underemployment in temporary and occasional jobs, unrelated to their educational background, and receive the minimum allowable base salary of Euro 500. This generation evolved in circumstances leading to the Greek debt crisis and participated in the 2010-2011 Greek protests. Scraping by generation. In Portugal, they are called the scraping by generation, a twist on the older term, the lousy generation, used by detractors to refer to student demonstrations in the 1990s against education ministers Antonio Couto dos Santos and later Manuela Ferreira Leite. Zennials. Zennials, Oregon Trail Generation, and Generation Catalano are terms used to describe individuals born during Generation X millennial cusp years. Zennials is a portmanteau blending the words Generation X and Millennials to describe a micro-generation of people born from the late 1970s to early 1980s. Zillennials, Zillennials, Zennials, Snapchat Generation, and Minion Z are terms used to describe individuals born during the Millennial Generation Z cusp years. Zillennials is a portmanteau blending the words Millennials and Generation Z to describe a micro-generation of people born from the early 1990s to the early 2000s. In Armenia, people born after the country's independence from the Soviet Union in 1991 are known as the Independence Generation. In Bulgaria, People born in the final years of communism and early years of capitalism, mid-1980s to mid-1990s, are known as the children of the transition. They are believed to have had a difficult time adapting to the many changes in the country that occurred during the time they were growing into adulthood. Regime and economic changes and shifts from Eastern to Western cultural values and influences, among other factors, were things their parents, being from previous generations, could not prepare them for. In the Czech Republic and Slovakia, the generation of people born in Czechoslovakia during the baby boom, which started in the early 1970s, during the period of normalization, are called Husak's children. The generation was named after the president and long-term communist leader of Czechoslovakia, Gustav Husak. This was due to his political program to boost the growth of population. In the People's Republic of China, the post-80s are those who were born in the 1980s in urban areas of mainland China. Growing up in modern China, the post-80s has been characterized by its optimism for the future, newfound excitement for consumerism and entrepreneurship, and acceptance of its historic role in transforming modern China into an economic power. There is also the similarly named post-90s, those born in the post-Tiananmen era of the 1990s. A broader generational classification would be the one-child generation born between the introduction of the one-child policy in 1980 and its softening into a two-child policy in 2013. The lack of siblings has had profound psychological effects on this generation, such as egoism due to always being at the center of parents' attention, as well as the stress of having to be the sole provider once the parents retire. People born post-80s in Hong Kong are for the most part different from the same generation in mainland China. The term post-80s came into use in Hong Kong between 2009 and 2010, particularly during the opposition to the Guangzhou-Hong Kong Express Rail link, during which a group of young activists came to the forefront of Hong Kong's political scene. They are said to be post-materialist in outlook, and they are particularly vocal in issues such as urban development, culture and heritage, and political reform. Their campaigns include the fight for the preservation of Lee Tung Street, the Star Ferry Pier, and the Queen's Pier, Choi Yuen Tsuen Village, real political reform on the 23rd of June, and a citizen-oriented Kowloon West Art District. Their discourse mainly develops around themes such as anti-colonialism, sustainable development, and democracy. In Hungary, the recriminalization of abortion and the childless tax policies implemented by Anna Ratko in the early 1950s resulted in a minor baby boom, roughly 1953-1956, known as the Ratko era or the Ratko children. In India, generations tend to follow a pattern similar to the broad Western model, although there are still major differences, especially in the older generations. One interpretation sees India's independence in 1947 as India's major generational shift. People born in the 1930s and 1940s tended to be loyal to the new state and tended to adhere to traditional divisions of society. Indian boomers, those born after independence and into the early 1960s, witnessed events like the Indian emergency between 1975 and 1977, which made a number of them somewhat skeptical of the government. In Israel, where most Ashkenazi Jews born before the end of World War II were Holocaust survivors, children of survivors and people who survived as babies are sometimes referred to as the second generation of Holocaust survivors. This term is particularly common in the context of psychological, social, and political implications of the individual and national transgenerational trauma caused by the Holocaust. Some researchers have also found signs of trauma in third-generation Holocaust survivors. In Northern Ireland, people born after the signing of the Good Friday Agreement in 1998 generally regarded as the end of the Troubles, are colloquially known as peace babies. In Norway, the term the dessert generation has been applied to the baby boomers and every generation afterwards. In Russia, characteristics of Russian generations are determined by fateful historical events that significantly change either the foundations of the life of the country as a whole or the rules of life in a certain period of time. Names and given descriptions of Russian generations: the generation of winners, the generation of the Cold War, the generation of perestroika, the first non-Soviet generation, the digital generation. In Singapore, people born before 1949 are referred to as the pioneer generation for their contributions to Singapore during the nation's earliest years. Likewise, those born between 1950 and 1959 are referred to as the Merdeka generation, as their formative years were during the political turbulence of the 1950s to 1960s in Singapore. In South Africa, people born after the 1994 general election, the first after apartheid was ended, are often referred to in media as the born-free generation. People born after the year 2000 are often referred to as AMA 2000, a term popularized by music and a Coca-Cola advert. In South Korea, generational cohorts are often defined around the democratization of the country, with various schemes suggested, including names such as the democratization generation, 386 generation, named after Intel 386 computer in the 1990s to describe people in their late 30s and early 40s who were born in the 1960s and attended University College in the 1980s, also called the June 3, 1987 generation, that witnessed the June Uprising, the April 19th generation, that struggled against the Syngman Rhee regime in 1960, the June 3rd generation, that struggled against the Normalization Treaty with Japan in 1964, the 1969 generation, that struggled against the constitutional revision allowing 3 presidential terms, and the Shinseidai, new generation. The term Shinseidai generation refers to the generation following millennials in the Korean language. The Shinseidai generation are mostly free from ideological or political bias. In Sweden, it is common to talk about people based on the decades of their births. 40-talist, a person that was born in the 1940s. 50-talist, a person that was born in the 1950s, etc. In Taiwan, the term strawberry generation refers to Taiwanese people born after 1981 who bruise easily like strawberries, meaning they cannot withstand social pressure or work hard like their parents' generation. The term refers to people who are insubordinate, spoiled, selfish, arrogant, and sluggish in work. In Turkey, it is common to talk about people based on the decades of the time they were teens. In Spain, although in general terms there is a certain assimilation to the generational structure of Strauss and Howe, and uncritically the majority of the media use it, there are substantial differentials for historical reasons that, as established by the generations theory, have marked the successive age cohorts in the century XVIII. Firstly, neutrality during the First World War, which prevented it from suffering that social and cultural impact. Secondly, the Civil War and the subsequent dictatorship, which lasted 4 decades and, especially during its first decades, imposed strong political, social, and cultural repression. And thirdly, neutrality during World War II. Thus, the sociologists Artemio Baigorri and Manuela Caballero insert between the silent generation and the baby boom generation, which they also call the protest generation, what they call the Franco generation, 1929-1943, whose childhood and early youth was marked by war, post-war scarcity, and repression. Napoleon was actually 5'7", which was slightly taller than the average Frenchman at the time. A Norse missionary named Leif Erikson is believed to have landed on Canadian shores 500 years before Columbus. Carl Benz, co-founder of Mercedes-Benz, invented the first modern gasoline-run automobile. 19 witches were executed by hanging, and one was pressed to death by stones. However, burning at the stake was a common practice during the European witch trials. Around 50,000 people were executed between the 15th and 18th centuries. A coin toss isn't 50/50ths, it's closer to 51/49, favoring the side that was facing up when the coin was thrown into the air. The Bible never mentions that forbidden fruit is an apple. The chubby Buddha motif actually depicts a 10th century Chinese monk named Budai. Earth rotates at about 1,040 miles per hour, 60% of the speed of a fired bullet. This rotation slightly flattens the poles and causes a bulge around the equator. Everest rises the highest above sea level, 29,035 feet, but Mauna Kea is the highest from base to summit at 33,500 feet. 13,796 feet of it is submerged in the Pacific Ocean. The sun is fusing hydrogen atoms into helium, meaning its heat and light come from nuclear fusion. Fire is a chemical reaction, which would not yield enough energy to last millions of years. While 70% of bat species use echolocation to navigate, all have eyes and are capable of sight. Cats and dogs mostly see shades of blue, gray, and yellow, much like a human with red-green color blindness. Bears fall into a deep sleep called torpor, which is not true hibernation. They can readily respond to external stimuli and wake up. Peanuts actually belong to the legume family along with beans and peas. The warming sensation is caused by blood vessels dilating. Drinking alcohol actually lowers body temperature. The Babylonians were using the Pythagorean theorem more than a millennium before he was born. It was more likely that he was a sage who taught the doctrine of metempsychosis, reincarnation. The penny will land tails up 80% of the time. Lincoln's head makes the head side heavier, making the coin more likely to fall with that side down. Greco-Roman sculptures were painted and decorated with vibrant colors, gemstones, and rich detail. A needle is only used to insert a small IV tube or catheter into the arm and is then removed, leaving the tube inside. There is no increased risk of muscle cramps if you swim shortly after eating. Shaving does not change the thickness, color, or growth rate of hair. The coarse tips left by shaving create an illusion of thickness. Not to be confused with multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia involves disordered thoughts, psychosis, and delusion. Brain scans have shown that no matter what someone is doing, all brain areas are active to some degree. Memories can't be recovered because drinking too much alcohol causes the part of the brain that encodes short-term memories to switch off. Fortune cookies were invented by Japanese Americans. They are extremely rare in China and seen as a part of American cuisine. Searing meat does not seal in moisture. It does produce a brown crust with a rich flavor via the Maillard reaction. Microwave oven radiation is non-ionizing, meaning it does not pose the cancer risks associated with X-rays. Coffee beans are actually seeds from coffee berries. Sugar does not make children hyper. Recent studies have debunked the sugar hyperactivity myth. A shot of espresso has about the same amount of caffeine as a cup of coffee. Turning on the interior light while driving is not illegal, but it does make it harder to see the road and can cause distracted driving. Entrapment law in the U.S. does not require police officers to identify themselves as police during stings or undercover work. Plus, police officers may lie during such work. It is not necessary to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. If there is evidence of violence or an unusual absence, police wants to act quickly. Aside from the Pidgin International Sign, each country generally has its own native sign language, and some have more than one. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. He did, however, develop the first practical light bulb in 1880, employing a carbonized bamboo filament. Despite numerous studies, there is little evidence that cameras directly reduce crime rates. Instead, they are often used to detect and prosecute crime after the fact. While 30% of people don't wash their hands, door handles have fewer bacteria than other parts of the room. Warm surfaces and larger doses are needed for bacteria to grow. The Moscow-Washington hotline was never a telephone line, nor at the White House. It is a Moscow Pentagon link that used teletype, then fax, and since 2008 secure email. In addition to the taste groups of bitter, sour, salty, and sweet, your tongue can also sense a taste group known as umami, which is a savory and meaty taste. Mental abilities are not absolutely separated into the left and right side of the brain. In fact, if one hemisphere is damaged at an early age, the other can take over. 8 glasses of water a day are not always needed. In reality, it varies by weight, activity level, clothing, heat, and humidity. Plus, you can get water from food too. Gum doesn't take 7 years to digest. The truth is, chewing gum is mostly indigestible and passes through the digestive system at the same rate as other matter. Vaccines do not cause autism. Although fraudulent research claimed a connection, repeated new studies ended in failure, and the original paper was dismissed. Drinking milk or consuming other dairy products does not increase mucus production. They don't need to be avoided by those with the flu or cold congestion. Vitamin C does not prevent the common cold, although it may have a protective effect during intense cold weather exercise and may reduce the duration of colds. Cracking one's knuckles in good health doesn't cause arthritis or other issues. The cracking sound comes from a gas bubble forming when the joints separate. There are no distinct zones for sweet, bitter, sour, and salty on your tongue. All different tastes can be detected on all parts of the tongue by all taste buds. There is a common myth that specific diets aid detoxification and can remove substances from your body. In reality, your liver and kidney do it automatically. A vegetarian or vegan diet can provide enough protein for adequate nutrition, and in most cases does. However, vitamin B12 supplementation can be required. There is no scientific basis for the belief that having sex in the days before a sporting event reduces performance. In fact, sex can increase testosterone, which could help. Sleepwalkers can get confused when woken, but not harmed. In fact, if you let them sleepwalk, they can lose their balance and fall. They're not zombies. Wake them. Drowning is often inconspicuous to onlookers. In many cases, raising the arms and screaming are impossible due to the instinctive drowning response. Hemoglobin gives blood its red color. Deoxygenated blood has a deep red color, and oxygenated blood has a cherry red color. Skin light scattering causes a blue appearance. Vacuums and decompression do not cause the body to explode or internal fluids to boil. Instead, they lead to a slower death from hypoxia. Another popular misconception. Evidence does not support a significant role for spicy food or coffee in the development of peptic ulcers in healthy people. Placing metal inside a microwave oven does not damage the oven's electronics, but it's still not safe. Electrical arcing makes metal hot and can harm you. This myth originated in World War II. While carrots are healthy, they don't give you supervision. They can help people with vitamin A deficiency see better, though. Twinkies have a shelf life of approximately 45 days and only remain on the shelf for about 10 days. In any case, they won't stay fresh and edible for decades. The signing of the United States Declaration of Independence did not occur on July 4th, 1776. After the Second Continental Congress voted on July 2nd, the signing was on August 2nd, 1776. George Washington did not have wooden teeth. His dentures were made of gold, hippopotamus ivory, lead, and animal teeth, including horse and donkey. Sports utility vehicles are known for their power, versatility, and ruggedness. These vehicles are designed to handle various terrains and weather conditions, making them popular for adventure seekers and outdoor enthusiasts. SUVs have a boxy body design, providing ample interior space for both passengers and cargo. They also offer higher ground clearance, allowing for better off-road capabilities. Some well-known SUV models include the Jeep Wrangler, Ford Explorer, and Toyota 4Runner. Station wagons, also called estate cars, are designed for versatility and spaciousness. These cars have an extended roofline and a two-box design, providing extra cargo space at the rear. Estate cars typically have fold-down rear seats, allowing for various seating and cargo configurations. They are popular among those who need extra storage space without compromising on comfort. Families and outdoor enthusiasts often favor estate cars. Sedans are the quintessential family cars. Their spacious interiors and comfortable seating make them perfect for everyday commuting and long drives. Sedans typically have three-box configurations with separate engine, passenger, and cargo compartments. They offer ample legroom and trunk space, making them ideal for families of all sizes. Popular sedan models include the Volkswagen Passat, Toyota Camry. Grand Tourers, also known as GT cars, are designed for long-distance driving in comfort and style. These cars have a luxurious and powerful design, offering a perfect blend of performance and luxury. Grand Tourers typically feature a 2+2 seating arrangement, providing ample space for both the driver and passengers. They are favored by those who enjoy taking road trips and traveling long distances in style. Popular Grand Tour models include the Bentley Continental GT, Aston Martin DB11, and Mercedes-Benz SL Class. Minivans are designed to provide maximum space and comfort for larger families. These vehicles have a boxy shape and a one-box or two-box configuration, allowing for ample interior space. Minivans typically have sliding doors for easy access to the rear seats and a flexible seating arrangement that can be adjusted to accommodate passengers or cargo. They are known for their practicality and are a popular choice for family vacations and road trips. Popular minivan models include the Honda Odyssey, Toyota Sienna, and Chrysler Pacifica. A crossover utility vehicle. A city car known for its comfy ride offers passengers a great travel experience. These cars boast top-notch interiors, ensuring a perfect trip, yet they need help with off-road capabilities. They're built with a unibody construction that excels in fuel efficiency. CUVs vary in categorization across countries, but share a style resembling SUVs. The Hyundai Santa Fe, Mazda CX-5, and Honda CR-V stand out as some of the finest SUVs, blending comfort, efficiency, and SUV-like looks. Limousines are the epitome of luxury and glamour. These vehicles are often associated with special events and VIP transportation. Limousines have a sleek outer body and a partition between the driver and passengers, creating a separate domain for each. They come equipped with luxurious compartments and amenities, making them one of the most expensive and luxury car types on the market. Limousines are favored by those who want to make a grand entrance and travel in style. Coupes are sleek and sporty cars that exude style and performance. These two-door vehicles are known for their compact size and aggressive design. Coupes often have a lower roofline and a more streamlined profile than other car types. They typically seat two passengers in the front and may have two smaller seats in the back. Coupes are favored by those who prioritize style and performance over practicality. Hatchbacks are compact cars that offer a balance of practicality and efficiency. Their unique two-box design provides a shared space for passengers and cargo. Hatchbacks are smaller than sedans, making them easier to maneuver in urban areas. They are also fuel efficient, making them an economical choice for daily commuting. Muscle cars are known for their powerful engines and high-performance capabilities. These mid-sized cars are often rear-wheel drive and have a lightweight body. Muscle cars are popular in the United States and Australia and are favored by those who want a combination of speed and style at an affordable price. While muscle cars traditionally have two doors, some manufacturers offer four-door versions. Popular muscle car models include the Ford Mustang, Dodge Challenger, and Chevrolet Camaro. Commercial vehicles are designed for practicality and functionality in transporting goods or passengers. These passenger vehicles come in various forms, including vans, trucks, and buses. They are often used for commercial purposes and have features tailored to meet specific transportation needs. Commercial vehicles may have a spacious cargo or seating area for passengers, depending on their intended use. They are popular among business owners and organizations that require reliable transportation solutions. Popular commercial vehicle models include the Ford Transit, Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, and Toyota Hiace. Pickup trucks are pretty common nowadays. They have a cab for passengers and an open area for cargo. These trucks can carry either 2 or 4 people. Most pickups have their cabins on a sturdy frame, except for the Honda Ridgeline. They're great for farmers and moving stuff because they've got big cargo spaces and powerful engines to tow heavy things. Many pickups can drive with all 4 wheels, while some only have 2-wheel drive. Pickup trucks come in 2 sizes: big ones, full size, and slightly smaller ones, mid-size. You can choose between different cab styles like extended, single, or crew cabs. A pony car is a distinct type of American car known for its affordable, stylish, and performance-oriented coupés or convertibles. These cars typically have rear-wheel drive, a sleek design with a long hood and short deck lid, and offer various customization options. Pony cars like the Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Camaro, and Dodge Challenger gained immense popularity in the 60s, catering to younger, enthusiastic drivers. They're smaller and more refined than muscle cars, emphasizing sportiness and various individualization choices. The hot hatch car is like a sporty version of the hatchback. It looks similar with its back door that opens upward in its compact shape. While it's not as roomy as a regular hatchback, it can still carry up to 5 people and a good amount of stuff. It first started being made in the late 1980s, and it's really popular with people in Europe and Asia. This usually involves upgrading the engine to be more powerful and improving the suspension and brakes. These cars are focused on making driving more enjoyable and exciting. That's why many people like to use them for fun activities like driving on curvy roads or participating in weekend track events. Hot rods are vintage cars known for their modified powerful engines aimed at achieving high speeds. The exact origin of the term remains uncertain, but it has been associated with vehicles that might have been stolen. They are easily identifiable by their design, often displaying the engine or showcasing prominent exhaust pipes as part of their exterior style. These cars emerged in the 1920s and were initially utilized by bootleggers during Prohibition. However, their popularity soared following World War II. These cars are usually old-fashioned, like muscle cars or classics. Most hot rods are made from similar kinds of cars to get that classic hot rod style, but truthfully, almost any old car can become a hot rod if it gets the right changes. The lowrider car embodies a vibrant cultural legacy, tracing back to Chicano community's passion for transforming classic automobiles. These cars, modified with hydraulics, showcase a distinct lifestyle, as echoed in War's iconic song. With its pulsating bass lines and spirited saxophone melodies, the track embodies the essence of cruising culture. The lowrider car isn't just a vehicle. It's a symbol of creativity, individuality, and the fusion of music and automotive artistry, leaving an indelible mark on American pop culture. Convertibles, also known as cabriolets, are a popular choice of exotic cars for those who want to experience the thrill of driving with the wind in their hair. These cars have a unique ability to convert from a closed-top vehicle to an open-air vehicle. Convertibles come in various designs, with some using automatic hydraulic or electrical actuators for a smooth and effortless conversion process. Electric cars stand out as a unique group, but signs suggest that almost every kind of car will turn electric in the coming decades. Electric vehicles, known as EVs, make the most of the incredible efficiency of electric motors. They're already improving all types of cars, faster yet more efficient, cheaper to power but able to charge at home, and they allow for creative ways to design interiors, improving space, safety, and handling. However, challenges to green cars persist. such as the high cost and weight of batteries and the lack of widespread dependable charging stations. The industry is actively working to address these issues. The Reconquista, or the Reconquest of Al-Andalus, was the successful series of military campaigns that European Christian kingdoms waged against the Muslim kingdoms following the Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula by the Umayyad Caliphate. The beginning of the Reconquista is traditionally dated to the Battle of Covadonga, circa 718 or 722, in which an Asturian army achieved the first Christian victory over the forces of the Umayyad Caliphate since the beginning of the military invasion. Its culmination came in 1492 with the fall of the Nasrid Kingdom of Granada to the Catholic monarchs. The Anglo-French Wars were a series of conflicts fought for 706 years, extending from 1109 CE until the second defeat of Napoleon in 1815. At that point, Napoleon's empire conceded to the combined strength of Europe. The Anglo-French Wars were mainly fought for control over French lands and included prominent battles such as Agincourt, Crécy, and Waterloo. Early struggles saw the successful deployment of the legendary British longbowmen, who trained to wield heavy yew longbows from a young age. However, the Anglo-French Wars also had far-reaching consequences beyond Europe, playing an essential role in forming independent colonies overseas. For example, France provided critical resources to the United States in the American Revolution of 1775. Interestingly enough, while there were many conflicts between France and England during this period, they were not continuous. Instead, there were relatively long periods of peace interspersed throughout. That sporadic frequency illustrates how dynamic the geopolitical situation was at that time, when tensions could shift from war to peace in a brief period. The Roman-Persian Wars embroiled two of the most powerful empires of the ancient world in conflict. The wars began in the mid-1st century BCE and didn't end until 628 CE, lasting a staggering 681 years. The wars began with a failed negotiation for an alliance between Mithridates II and Lucius Cornelius Sulla, followed by an invasion into Mesopotamia by Roman general Marcus Crassus in 53 BCE. During these wars, there were periods when both sides achieved significant victories over one another. Finally, Eastern Roman Emperor Heraclius and his brother Theodore managed to deliver fatal blows to the Persian Empire, and the subsequent Persian ruler successfully sued for peace. Even today, the Roman-Persian Wars are some of the longest and most influential wars in history, as technological innovations altered the world's military tactics for centuries to come. The Byzantine-Bulgarian Wars were a series of conflicts that took place for 675 years between the Eastern Roman, Byzantine Empire, and Bulgaria. The wars began when Khan Asparuh led his people, the Bulgars, across the Danube River into Byzantine territory in 680 CE and established their kingdom. Though the Bulgarian Empire and its successes posed a significant threat to Byzantium sovereignty, throughout the centuries-long conflict, both empires achieved some level of peace and security by signing treaties and long-term truces. That peace would eventually shatter under Tsar Simeon and Tsar Ivan Alexander, who were determined to expand their empire further into Byzantine lands. The last war of the series brought victory to Bulgaria in 1355 CE, ultimately leading to the Ottoman conquest, and that marked an end for both empires. The Roman-Germanic Wars were a series of conflicts that spanned 708 years, from 113 BC to 596 CE. This clash between the two civilizations resulted in the displacement of the Roman Empire and Germanic ancestral regions from the 2nd century BCE to the 10th century CE. Though there were plenty of battles and alliances over these centuries, a significant event was the 476 defeat of Romulus Augustus to Odoacer, which marked the official end of the Western Roman Empire. Over the next 120 years, Frankish and Visigoth rulers continued to dissect the Roman Empire while engaging with Byzantine generals from Eastern Rome. The Byzantine-Lombard Wars overlap with the Roman-Germanic Wars, and it is at this time that Western Rome ceased to exist, thus ending the 708-year conflict. In conclusion, the Roman-Germanic Wars lasted an unprecedented amount of time and impacted European territories. The Arab-Byzantine Wars were a series of conflicts that spanned over 4 centuries in 1 year. This long-standing animosity between the two mighty empires had many factors, including economic, geopolitical, and religious, which led to several battles until their resolution in 1050 CE. In 629 CE, Muhammad opposed the Byzantine Empire, and by 638 CE, Arab forces had conquered the previously Roman Levant, Egypt, and Persia. The Byzantines suffered more losses until the empire benefited from a resurgence in the 10th century. Through the support of Europe in the Crusades, the Byzantine Empire regained total dominance by the 1100s. Seljuk Turks replaced the threat of the Arabs by the 1050s, thus ending the Arab-Byzantine Wars. The consequences of these wars shaped the landscape in Europe and the Middle East, creating one of the most infamous grudges in human history. The Bulgarian-Serbian Wars were a series of conflicts between the Bulgarian Empire and medieval Serbian states between the 9th and 14th centuries in the Central Balkans. Before the 12th century, the Serbian states were dependent upon and strongly influenced by the dominant Balkan powers, the Bulgarian and Byzantine empires. The rulers of both those countries sought to control Serb princes to use them as allies in the Byzantine-Bulgarian Wars. The first war between Bulgarians and Serbs occurred during the reign of Presian between 839 and 842, precipitated by Byzantine diplomacy. Later, after a series of campaigns, the Bulgarian Emperor Simeon I conquered and destroyed the Serb state in 924. The Bulgarian Emperor Peter I granted formal independence to Serbia in 931 and appointed his protege Kaslav Klonimirovich as its ruler. The most powerful Serbian state of the time, that of Duklja, was again subjugated by Emperor Samuil in 998. In the 13th century, Stefan Dragutin and his brother Stefan Milutin fought against the Bulgarian governors of Belgrade and Braničevo, Darman and Kudalin, and managed to defeat them. In 1327, the emperors of Bulgaria and Byzantium signed an anti-Serbian alliance to stop Serbia's growing power, but in 1330, Bulgarian Emperor Michael III Shishman was defeated by Stefan Dekanski in the Battle of Velbasht. The Yaqui Wars were a series of armed conflicts between New Spain and its successor state, the Mexican Republic, against the Yaqui natives. The period began in 1533 and lasted until 1929. The Yaqui Wars, along with the Caste War against the Maya, were the last conflicts of the centuries-long Mexican-Indian Wars. Over the course of nearly 400 years, the Spanish and the Mexicans repeatedly launched military campaigns into Yaqui territory, which resulted in several serious battles and massacres. The Yemeni-Ottoman conflicts refer to battles between 1538 CE and 1911 CE, mostly involving the Ottoman Empire and various factions in Yemen. The Ottomans attempted to expand their imperial rule over areas in the Arabian Peninsula, explicitly targeting Yemen, thus fueling the conflict. Several successive Ottoman governors, such as Selim II and Suleiman I, led many of these engagements, resorting to military campaigns against local rulers when diplomatic negotiations were unsuccessful. These wars resulted in territorial gains for the Ottomans, leading to increased control over Yemen and parts around it. The numerous incursions throughout this period had a lasting impact on Yemeni culture and history, with both sides suffering considerable losses in terms of men and resources. Finally, in 1911, after 373 years of fighting, they reached an agreement granting autonomy to Yemen under Ottoman suzerainty until World War I broke out a few years later. The Moroccan-Portuguese conflicts lasted from 1415 CE to 1769 CE and were a series of wars and skirmishes between the Portuguese Empire and the kingdoms of Morocco. The original aim of the conflict was for Portugal to gain control over Morocco to maintain their naval supremacy in the western Mediterranean Sea. This conflict began when Portuguese forces seized Ceuta in 1415 and attempted to capture other coastal cities such as Tangier and Azamor. In response, the Moroccans fought back under numerous sultans, including Sultan Abd al-Malik, who emerged victorious against a Portuguese attack in 1578. Nevertheless, despite facing several defeats at the hands of Abd al-Malik, Portugal still managed to obtain several fortresses along the Moroccan coastline. However, King Sebastian of Portugal died in battle, and over the next 190 years, each Portuguese foothold was either abandoned or returned. This period of relative peace continued until Portugal finally withdrew its forces from Moroccan territory in 1769. The Russo-Turkish Wars were a series of 12 conflicts between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire that spanned from 1568 CE to 1918 CE. During this period, the two empires fought several battles, primarily over control of religious sites in the Holy Land, access to the Black Sea, and territories in Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. In 1569, the Ottoman Sultan Selim II attempted to push the Russians out of the lower Volga by dispatching a military expedition to Astrakhan, sparking the earliest conflict between the Ottomans and Russians. Subsequently, numerous clashes happened over areas such as Crimea, which changed hands multiple times until Russia finally annexed it in 1783. The next major conflict occurred in 1828 when Russia declared war on Turkey for its involvement in Greece's independence movement. This escalation later expanded into Romania and Bulgaria, leading to further territorial gains for Russia. Later on, during World War I, Russia joined forces with Britain against Germany and its allies, including Turkey, resulting in a decisive victory for Russia and its allies at the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in 1918, which brought an official end to all hostilities. The Arauco War was a long-running conflict between colonial Spaniards and the Mapuche people, mostly fought in the Araucanía region of Chile. The conflict began at first as a reaction to the Spanish conquerors attempting to establish cities and force Mapuches into servitude. It subsequently evolved over time into phases comprising drawn-out sieges, slave-hunting expeditions, pillaging raids, punitive expeditions, and renewed Spanish attempts to secure lost territories. Abduction of women and war rape was common on both sides. Dano-Swedish War may refer to one of multiple wars which took place between the Kingdom of Sweden and the Kingdom of Denmark, from 1450 in personal union with the Kingdom of Norway up to 1814. The 335 Years' War was an alleged state of war between the Netherlands and the Isles of Scilly, located off the southwest coast of Great Britain. It is said to have been extended by the lack of a peace treaty for 335 years without a single shot being fired, which would make it one of the world's longest wars and a bloodless war. Despite the uncertain validity of the declaration of war, and thus uncertainty about whether or not a state of war ever actually existed, peace was finally declared in 1986, bringing an end to any hypothetical war that may have been legally considered to exist. The Spanish-Moro conflict was a series of battles in the Philippines lasting several centuries. It began during the Spanish Philippines and lasted until the Spanish-American War, when Spain finally began to subjugate the Moro people after centuries of attempts to do so. Spain ultimately conquered portions of the Mindanao and Jolo Islands and turned the Sultanate of Sulu into a protectorate, establishing geographic dominance over the region until the Spanish-American War. Moro resistance continued,